for the hardest-hitting show in talk radio. The true progressive voice since 2012. This is Southpaws.
And welcome to Southpaws on the Pacifica Radio Network. We are the leaders of the revolution. My name is Darren Gibson. I'm your co-host.
And I'm Katy Steele Baroni.
Hey, thanks for joining me again, Katy, as Jack continues his break from the show here. We've got a lot to talk about today. Trump is floating the idea of delaying the election. We're going to tell you why he can't do that. And we've got a couple of updates to some stories that we have talked about in the past 6 months or so. So we'll get to those updates first right off the bat. Before we get started, a couple of reminders so you can follow us on social media by going to facebook.com/Southpaws Radio Show. You can follow us on Twitter at Southpaws Radio. You can become a patron of the show by going to patreon.com/Southpaws Radio. You can listen to the show anytime you like at Spreaker.com. Do a search for Southpaws there. You can also find us at the iTunes Store. Do a search under Podcasts for Southpaws. Once you've found our logo, you've found us. Links to our podcasts are automatically sent to our Facebook, Twitter, and our YouTube account. Go to youtube.com. Do a search for Southpaws Radio to listen to the show there. And you can hear us on great Pacifica stations, including KCEI-FM, Taos, New Mexico, KZGM in Kabul, Missouri, and Global Community Radio Channel 1. We're on every Saturday night at 11 p.m. Make sure you listen to us there if you get that. Right now, I want to start out with an update to a story we told you in early May. There were 3 big Trump supporters. That's not the word that I used on the Facebook page. They attended a session of the Michigan legislature. During that time, the gallery to the Capitol building was closed to the public because of coronavirus. They went up there anyway. They were told to leave. The Capitol ushers came up and told them, get out now, you're not allowed to be up here. They claimed, oh, we're the public, we're part of the media. No, they're not part of the media. Not at all. Sorry, I've got press credentials. I've gone to school for journalism. I have a degree. I've worked in the business off and on for over 30 years. I'm a journalist. They're not. Sorry. Well, the Capitol ushers then decided to physically evict them, dragging them out. There's video of it all over the place. You can see it anywhere. Freaking hilarious, I thought. And the one, I think it was Jennifer, claimed that she was injured. One of them claimed she was injured. I think it was Jennifer. Well, going back to this case, it took 3 months, but the state has now levied charges against the 3 women. And here they are. Jennifer Darling, who apparently is the leader of Michigan United for Liberty, has been charged with felony resisting arrest and felony criminal trespassing. The state has issued arrest warrants, and she is supposed to be turning herself in as we're recording here on Friday, July 31st, 2020. So I don't know if that's happened yet or if she's on her way there to turn herself in or what. But the other 2 ladies, Michelle Gregoire, who, by the way, is running for the Michigan State House in the 62nd District, she has been charged with felony resisting arrest and misdemeanor trespassing.
At said state house.
Correct? Yes.
Okay,
yep.
Just checking.
And then Audra Johnson, my old friend, who I'm no longer friends with, you know her as the MAGA bride. She's the one that wore the Donald Trump Make America Great Again dress for her own wedding. The groomsmen were wearing Don't Tread on Me cufflinks on their tuxedos. Everybody in the party, except for one of her bridesmaids who absolutely refused to wear it, wore maggot hats. So Audra has been charged with misdemeanor trespassing. Now, Audra and Michelle Gregoire turned themselves in yesterday, and they posted a video of them standing outside where they had to go turn themselves in. They were released on personal reconnaissance bonds. So
How did they get PR bonds? I'd like to know.
that's what I'd like to know, too.
Very
I don't know.
interesting. Very interesting.
So that is the update with those three. We'll keep you updated on the process there.
I just got to throw in there, one of those three may have, in the last 6 months, gone to a city council meeting to tattle on me for calling her a B-word on Facebook.
Well,
So in her free time.
yeah. Well, here's my philosophy on that. If you don't want to be called something, don't engage in that behavior.
Precisely.
Yeah. That's why people say, "Oh, Darren, you need to tone down your language." No, I don't.
Yeah, this was over. It was blatant racism. She was being blatantly racist,
Well,
and I had to say something. So it is what it is.
Well, if you don't want to be called a racist, don't be a racist. If you don't want to be called an asshole, don't be an asshole.
Words to live
It's
by.
that simple, folks. That's my philosophy. It's that simple. If you don't want to be called something, don't engage in it.
This is true. Somebody should tell that to these ICE agents right now that are really, really sad that they're being compared to Nazis. Because apparently they are just enforcing the law. I can't remember where I've heard that before, but I think it was some crying Nazis.
Oh, yeah, pretty much. Oh, you can't prosecute us. We were just doing what we were told by our fearless leader.
Yes,
Well,
our fascist dictator.
That didn't work in Geneva. Sorry, folks, it didn't.
It was not that long ago. We were dragging geriatric Nazis right out of the U.S., which
Yeah,
may be happening again soon.
Yeah, God, don't I wish?
Hope.
Yeah, but it's just too much here. And actually, we might as well just go right into the exposing the fascism portion of our show. I have this. This is the British Broadcasting Corporation published this July 30th. Donald Trump has suggested November's presidential election be postponed, saying increased postal voting could lead to fraud and inaccurate results. Let me just stop right there and give you my thoughts on that. No, he is wrong. He is lying to you. Its increased fraud is bullshit. It is 100% USDA grade A bullshit. Now, let me continue the story here. He floated a delay until people could, quote, properly, securely, and safely, end of quote, vote. Well, they can. It's called the mail. You get an absentee ballot, you fill it out, you either mail it before the deadline, which now Trump slowing down the mail. If it's a week before, drop it off at your clerk's office. You can drop it off. My township clerk, and I'm in a rural area, has a drop box. You drop it in, boom, done. It's registered.
Yes, and I've had friends tell me that they can go online right now, request their absentee ballot, and get it immediately. It's coming within days. So.
So, yeah, please get it, especially if you are susceptible to getting COVID, like if you have underlying conditions like I do. But let me continue here. There is little evidence to support Trump's claims, but he has long railed against mail-in voting, which he has said would be susceptible to fraud. Well, let me just stop there. Hasn't Oregon gone to all-mail ballots for years, and they don't have issues there?
I've heard there's less fraud with mail-in ballots, with paper ballots in general.
Washington State, I believe, has gone to all mail-in ballots.
I feel safer with paper ballots and
Yeah.
and having, hard evidence.
Especially when some of these electronic voting machines
Oh, who's making them? Where are they
Diebold,
coming from?
Diebold, who is one of the largest manufacturers of bank equipment. They make teller drawers. They make ATMs. They make the speakers for the drive-thrus.
If my research is correct, I think this area is one of the first places that was manufacturing ballot machines back in the day. And I don't know if that was the company doing it, but I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah, but the problem is with these electronic machines, they can say, well, there's no modem in these. These are safe. No, they've detected modems in them.
Oh, okay. So they're just lying to us.
Exactly.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. U.S. states want to make postal voting easier due to public health concerns over the coronavirus pandemic. Now, here's the important part of the story, folks. Under the U.S. Constitution, Trump does not have the authority to postpone the election himself. Any delays have to be approved by Congress. And Trump does not have direct power over the two houses of Congress. As a matter of fact, a lot of Republicans in the Senate came out yesterday and blasted Trump for even suggesting this, including, surprisingly, Mitch McConnell, who said, well, we're just going to go ahead with the election as scheduled in November. You know, like I said, it was a shock to hear that, because usually they just bow to him and kiss the ring and whatever else. In a series of tweets, Trump said that universal mail-in voting would make November's vote the, quote, most inaccurate and fraudulent election in history, end of quote, and a, quote, great embarrassment to the USA, end of quote.
So he thinks he's going to lose.
Exactly. And the polls are starting to show that he is losing. I saw a story earlier this week on social media. The Trump campaign is no longer going to purchase advertising in the state of Michigan, because he's down so far against Biden. I believe it's 11
in Michigan?
I guess it's 11 points. Yeah,
See,
I'm surprised.
I hope that's true, but that's hard for me to believe from what I'm seeing.
Exactly, because didn't Hillary have
supposedly an 18-point margin or something on Bernie, and then just got blown out of the water. Yeah.
And then, well, even with Trump.
Yeah, she was way up on Trump, too, supposedly.
Yep.
And I'm not seeing Biden signs. I don't see a Biden sign anywhere. But I see Trump signs. I can't even drive through rural America right now. So I just think we all need to talk to our friends.
Yeah.
Try to get them on board with not having a fascist dictatorship.
Exactly. He then suggested, without providing evidence, that mail-in voting, as it's known in the U.S., would be susceptible to foreign interference. Now, wait a minute. How would that happen?
Yeah. How would that be more susceptible to foreign interference? Unless, somebody's letting foreign countries into our postal system or election system.
Mm-hmm. Here's what he said. Quote, the Democrats talk of foreign influence in voting, but they know that mail-in voting is an easy way for foreign countries to enter the race. End of quote. How?
How? Give us anything to back up that statement. That's completely illogical.
Yeah. Mr. Trump, my ass. Trump also said postal voting was already proving to be a catastrophic disaster in areas where it was being tried out. In June, New York allowed voters to vote by post in the Democratic primary poll for the party's presidential candidate, but there have been long delays in counting the ballots and the results are still unknown. Well, who knows why? Get more poll workers. Do what we do in Michigan. There's, it's a paper ballot, but you slide it into the machine, it counts it, boom. U.S. media report that there are also concerns that many ballots will not be counted because they were not filled in correctly or do not have postmarks on them that show they were sent before voting officially ended. However, several other states have long conducted votes by post. Well, it's real simple. If you have spoiled your ballot, contact your clerk, your township clerk, your city clerk, your county clerk, get a new ballot. It's easy.
Yep.
You turn in your old one, you get a new one.
Very true.
There's easy solutions to things, but people want to complicate things, especially Republicans, specifically Trump. Trump can't delay November's presidential election without Congress, partially controlled by the Democrats, first approving the decision. If you didn't already know this, someone has certainly told him by now. Trump also must know that tweeting about a delay, even framed as an "I'm just asking" question, is sure to ignite a political firestorm. No, that's why he does it. This is done on purpose, folks.
He is floating the question, because if you start just saying it and normalize it, you say it enough times.
Yep. A lie repeated over and over again
becomes truth.
Generally gets accepted as the truth.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Trump appears to be doing everything in his power to undermine the credibility of November's vote, in which a record number of Americans are predicted to rely on mail-in voting to avoid the risk of exposure to the coronavirus. He has repeatedly made false and misleading claims about the reliability of the mail balloting and suggested broad conspiracy theories. Critics warn that he could be laying the groundwork for contesting the results, although the purpose may be simply to give him a scapegoat if he loses. No, it's more than that.
Yeah.
And by the way, that part of the story is an analysis by Anthony Zerker, who is a North American reporter for BBC. So, yeah.
I'm real scared about this one. I am not going to lie. I'm not going to try not to scare anybody. I think this is May Day. This is where we need to make a serious call in distress, because we've talked about this being a possibility. We've all kind of seen this coming, and it's happening. Like, right now is when we have to understand where we're at and make plans to keep ourselves as safe as we can and protect our rights, because we need them if we want to survive.
Yep, exactly. And I want to move on to another story here. Speaking of everybody's rights, this is something that you really need to listen to, folks. This is from Newsweek. Let me just repeat. This is Newsweek. They are not a liberal rag. They are very conservative. This is Daniel Villarreal writing for Newsweek on July 28th. At least 12 Black Lives Matter protesters arrested during the ongoing demonstrations in Portland, Oregon, have been told not to attend protests as a condition of their release from jail, something which may be a violation of their First Amendment rights to free speech and assembly. Let me stop there and make the correction.
It is an
absolute violation of the First Amendment right to free speech, free assembly, and the right to petition the government for redress of grievances.
The most important rights we have, you guys. The most important ones.
It's not your guns, folks. It's your speech.
Yes.
Oh, boy. Let me continue here. A document entitled Orders Setting Conditions of Release states this, quote, defendant may not attend any other protests, rallies, assemblies, or public gathering in the state of Oregon, end of quote.
Direct violation of the Constitution. Direct. There's no two ways around it. If that's not a violation, we might as well tear it up and throw it away.
Yep. The document is given to arrested protesters to sign before they're allowed out of jail. Though the conditional release orders were signed by magistrate judges John V. Acosta and Jolie A. Russo of the U.S. District Court for the District of Oregon, it's unclear whether the magistrates or Justice Department officials added the condition forbidding arrestees to attend future protests or public gatherings. Several of the orders had the condition written on it before being given to a magistrate for signing. That is according to investigative journalism nonprofit ProPublica.
So, hold on. You're saying it's possible that they made this deal, the plea bargain or whatever, and then added that after they had agreed to it?
It looks like several of them were written on it before being given to a magistrate for signing.
But I believe the magistrate would sign it after they had signed it, after they had agreed. Oh, wow.
Oh, boy. Oh, I see where you're getting at.
Yeah,
okay.
Like they may have signed it and then had that added and not known it. And then if you attend another protest, you're violating your probation and not realizing it.
Yeah. Some of the orders forbid defendants from attending protests in all of Oregon, while others only forbid protests in Portland or don't specify any geographic area whatsoever, stating, quote, do not participate in any protests, demonstrations, rallies, assemblies while this case is pending. End of quote.
Imagine the definition of assembly. Assembly is just people assembling. I mean, you could be walking out your door, have 3 people outside, and all of a sudden you, just by walking outside, have assembled.
Yeah. Several protesters told ProPublica that they felt they had to accept the conditional release or else remained imprisoned indefinitely.
That's what they do with these things.
Yep. Many of the protesters facing these conditional releases were often charged with petty offenses such as failing to obey a lawful order or disorderly conduct.
I have one of those charges. Failing to obey a lawful order.
Protesters not specifically banned from protesting are either given 8 p.m. or 10 p.m. curfews that would restrict them from attending Portland's nighttime protest, or are forbidden from being within 5 blocks of the federal courthouse where the city's nighttime protests are taking place.
Oh, my gosh.
Jamil Jaffer of Columbia University's Knight First Amendment Institute told the nonprofit, quote, the government has a very heavy burden when it comes to restrictions on protest rights and on assembly. I don't see that as constitutionally defensible, and I find it difficult to believe that any judge would uphold it. End of quote. But
we've seen the Trumps who, I'm sorry,
Trumps.
But
you might as well call them the Trumps.
Pardon my Freudian slip.
You might as well call them the Trumps.
We have seen the judges being appointed and elected, and it is terrifying. So I can't remember. I feel so horrible about not remembering her name right now. But the justice in Michigan who insists on telling us every time she gets up behind a podium, the courts, the courts, the courts. It's the most important thing to look at when you are voting. Look at the judges. They're the only checks we have right now, you guys.
Yeah, exactly. And you really need to do your research because the judge races in Michigan are nonpartisan, is what I'm trying to say.
It is very hard to tell who you're voting for unless you go through and look at their decisions on previous cases. But it's the most important check you're going to make on the ballot box because ultimately they're the only ones that can uphold your rights. If they don't care about them, you don't have them.
Exactly. Portland has become a center of national focus during the ongoing racial justice protests sparked by the May 25th murder of black Minneapolis resident George Floyd by a white police officer. More demonstrators have started attending Portland's nightly protests in response to the U.S. government sending agents to protect the federal courthouse where the protests occur. Actually, I want to stop because I want to go back to the previous sentence and the way they phrased it. Portland has become a center of national focus during the ongoing racial justice protests sparked by the May 25th murder of black Minneapolis resident George Floyd by a white police officer. So I'm shocked that they called it murder.
And I'm so happy because the fact that they keep brushing his murder under the rug, and along with Breonna Taylor's murder and all the other murders that continue happening, to focus on property damage.
The city's mayor, the state governor, and the state attorney general have all accused the federal agents of needlessly provoking violence by using blunt impact munitions and tear gas against demonstrators, which, by the way, the use of tear gas is banned by the Geneva Convention. It is, folks. Sorry.
And just cutting in here because we constantly compare Trump to Hitler. But stop for a second and think about how she got the power that he has in China, okay? The first thing she did was violently attack protesters with the military and the police. It was the first thing. And this is, I mean, just pay attention.
Yeah. On July 21st, Federal Protective Service Deputy Director of Operations Richard Klein said that 3 federal agents had been blinded by demonstrators who directed laser pointers into the agents' eyes. However, ProPublica reports that by July 24th, the most serious injury detailed in federal charging documents was an agent who reported seeing spots in his eyes for 15 minutes after the laser attack.
Attack, they said.
Yeah. That's a direct quote from the report by FPS. By the way, Newsweek contacted the Department of Homeland Security for comment. They didn't respond. Not a surprise.
They don't have to.
Not a surprise, because they're just a bunch of
Nazis.
We'll just call them
Nazis.
Fascist, whatever. Same thing.
SS.
Yeah. Well, I called them the SS last week, so
It's truth. I'm sorry, friends, but that's where we're at.
Yeah. All right, so that should scare the hell out of you folks, and if that doesn't, we will have more stories to tell you about that are just god-awful. But first, I want to mention a couple of things here. Thursday, I was shocked when I received a news alert on my phone that Herman Cain had died of coronavirus.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, Herman Cain, the 2012 presidential candidate who famously came up with his 999 plan for tax reform, which former co-host Jim Gurner said it sounds like the price of a pizza. Yeah, Herman Cain attended the Donald Trump rally in Tulsa, Oklahoma in June, and 10 days later came down with coronavirus and had been hospitalized ever since, and he passed away on Thursday from coronavirus. He was 74 years old. He was an executive at Pillsbury and was a vice president there. Pillsbury at the time owned Burger King, so he was put in charge of Burger King for a while as one of their top executives. And then Pillsbury finally in 1986 made him the chairman and CEO of another fast food joint that they owned, Godfather's Pizza. And he was the CEO there from 86 to 96. So that's where Jim got his line, sounds like the price of a pizza for the 999 plan. So, and
that's interesting. I didn't realize that Herman Cain was involved in Burger King or Godfather's.
Yeah. Yeah, and I believe, I'm trying to remember, Burger King, I know Pillsbury sold it to Seagram's. I want to say Heinz Foods owns them now. Kraft Heinz.
Yeah, I believe it, because there's only, four names left now that own everything.
Because there was a controversy about a year or two ago, all the fast food restaurants that carried Heinz ketchup got pissed when Heinz Kraft bought up Burger King.
Okay.
So Wendy's stopped using Heinz ketchup. They're now using, I don't know who they're using.
Really? I didn't realize that.
Yeah. Oh, it was a big deal. It made the news. I was like, what? You're arguing over ketchup?
As long as they're not using Hunt's, because that's not real ketchup. But
I think Wendy's is either using Hunt's or Del Monte. I forget.
Ooh. Thanks for the heads up.
Yeah. So, but then we have another politician who has come down with the coronavirus. I have this story. This is Lauren Egan, Kristen Welker, Shannon Pettypiece, and Garrett Hake writing for NBC News. This is dated July 29th out of Washington. Representative Louis Gohmert, Republican of Texas, who has refused to wear a mask, tested positive for the coronavirus Wednesday, shortly before he was expected to travel with Donald Trump to Texas.
Close.
Yeah, no kidding. The 66-year-old Gohmert, who is one of the most outspokenly conservative members of Congress, said that he tested positive during the routine screening at the White House prior to boarding Air Force One, and blamed his infection on the fact that he had begun to wear a mask more frequently in recent days.
That explains it.
News that the Texas Republican contracted the coronavirus sent lawmakers scrambling to account for Gohmert's whereabouts in the Capitol in the days leading up to his positive test. It also reignited conversations about whether lawmakers, many of whom travel to Washington from all around the country and tend to be in vulnerable age groups, were taking appropriate precautions to prevent an outbreak on Capitol Hill. Well, you can put an end to that controversy right now, because on Thursday, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi laid the hammer down. Everybody in Congress is masked or no entry, period.
Oh, I hadn't even heard that. Good to know.
Yeah. She dropped the hammer yesterday. She's had enough of this foolishness. Gohmert attended Attorney General William Barr's hearing before the House Judiciary Committee Tuesday. Man, I hope he passed it on to him. I can wish. Yeah. Sitting for hours in a hearing room with dozens of other lawmakers, Gohmert, along with other Republicans, was seen at times during the day without a mask. In an interview with a local Texas news station Wednesday morning after learning he was infected, Gohmert said it was ironic that he tested positive, quote, because a lot of people have made a big deal out of my not wearing a mask a whole lot, but in the last week or two, I have worn a mask more than I have in the whole last 4 months. I can't help but wonder if by keeping a mask on and keeping it in place, if I might have put some germs, some of the virus on the mask and breathed it in. End of quote.
No, but there's a really good chance maybe you killed less people, so there's that.
Mm-hmm. Gohmert appeared to be dialing into the interview, by the way, from his Capitol Hill office. He didn't isolate a home, folks.
That's nice. That's nice.
And by the way, many lawmakers and staffers were working in the Capitol Hill office on Wednesday.
So we should hear about this in a couple of weeks, is what you're telling me, when they start testing positive.
It is unclear why he went back to the Hill, where social distancing can be difficult after testing positive. In a statement that was posted to Twitter, Gohmert said he would be very, very careful to make sure he did not give the coronavirus to anyone, and referred to it as the Wuhan virus. Because he's a racist, just like Trump.
Mm-hmm. Just like the entire GOP.
Yep. Gohmert was seen standing in proximity to Barr in the Capitol hallway Tuesday while neither he nor Barr wore a mask. His chief of staff, Connie Hare, tweeted Wednesday that, quote, he wore a mask at the hearing unless he was speaking, end of quote, and suggested, as Gohmert did, that fiddling with the mask could have been what led to an infection. Well, that's why you have hand sanitizer at the ready, people. My God, I told you about this in February when this all started. I read a letter from a virologist that has studied coronaviruses since the 1970s. Put a mask on. Use hand sanitizer. Get wipes.
Keep your door handles. Keep everything clean.
Use
Services.
vinyl gloves, disposable vinyl gloves when you pump gas or touch anything that's a common touch area. Mm-hmm. I can't tell you the last time that I've pumped gas without wearing a glove.
No, I can't either. Not since March, for sure.
Yeah, and the glove goes off. You
take
roll
it
it
from
inside
the inside out and throw it away.
Throw it away. When I take my mom to the bank, because our bank is still closed, they still have the lobby closed.
Yep.
So go through the drive-through.
Same here.
Glove on each hand, grab the container, put the stuff in, send it, get it back, take the money out or whatever, paperwork, license, everything, take it out, put the tube back in. Before I even touch the steering wheel on the car, I reach over, right into the middle of my hand, I pull one glove off and hold it, and then slip the other one underneath and pull it over both gloves. So
throw them away,
and then you throw them away, and then you hit the hand sanitizer. I mean, it's just... Oh, and by the way, before I got here today to record, I had a doctor's appointment that was delayed for about a good 2 months. And I walked in, I had my mask and I had a face shield on.
Okay.
So double protection, because Dr. Fauci said earlier this week you need to cover your eyes too, because the virus can enter your eyes and get you sick. So when I got there, my doctor was asking me how comfortable I felt with the mask and the visor. I said, it's not a big deal. This is easy. He says, good, because all of Spectrum Health is going to that starting Monday.
Everybody that works there?
Everybody that works there has to have a mask and a face shield. Face shields are coming for them. So
interesting.
So we'll see what happens there. I'm hoping they got a big room, because I can only imagine how many face shields they have to have.
Oh, man. Yeah.
All the doctors, all the nurses, the office staff, everybody.
Oh, yeah. It's good.
So I hope they've got a nice big room somewhere with one of those UVC lights that can disinfect everything.
They actually do. Grand Rapids was lucky, and they invested in that years ago, I guess. Several years ago, to have all that stuff to sanitize their equipment, and it's pretty high-tech and new. So
yeah, and that's actually one thing I bought off the internet during the pandemic. I got one of those boxes for disinfecting your phone. I throw my mask in there and disinfect it.
Nice.
Throw my money in there and disinfect that too, so it works out really good.
Good idea.
Those boxes are not cheap, folks. So let me just tell you.
I believe it.
Let me see. Continuing the story here, Justice Department spokeswoman Carrie Kupik confirmed reports the bar took a coronavirus test Wednesday after it was revealed that Gomert had tested positive. Kupik said bar's test was negative for the virus. But that doesn't necessarily mean anything, because if it's one of those rapid tests, those have a false negative.
And they're all a bunch of liars.
Yeah. Representative Kay Granger, also a Texas Republican, said she was seated next to Gomert on a flight from Texas Sunday evening and would self-quarantine at the direction of the Congress's attending physician. Representative Raul Grijalva, Democrat of Arizona, said he would also self-quarantine after attending a hearing of the Natural Resources Committee with Gomert on Tuesday. Wednesday night, Representative Mike Johnson, Republican of Louisiana, said on Twitter that he had dinner with Gomert on Tuesday. He would self-quarantine, even though he's not exhibiting symptoms, or at least not right now. Because you don't know.
Yeah,
you
most
don't
of
know.
the people getting tested positive right now are asymptomatic, is what I'm hearing. So it's not like everybody that's testing positive is sick, but that's why you have to be so careful, because you don't know if you're spreading it.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, I am also had my doctor do a lab work for me, and I'll probably do next week sometime, for antibody tests.
Oh, nice.
Because I have tested twice, and I've been negative both times.
But that doesn't mean you didn't have it before.
But I'm almost certain I had it in March.
I think that it went through my house in February or March as well.
But he was telling me, too, that there was a strain of flu that was going around about the same time that exhibited the same symptoms. So it could be that I had this mild case of the flu, but because my symptoms were low-grade fever, headache. That was it.
Okay. See, when it went through our house, it was the lungs, the cough, and the breathing for my son, who was 10. I mean, for a while, he was like texting me. to talk. And he does nebulizer and breathing treatments when he gets sick in the winter pretty often, but this was a different level. Like, he had to sleep sitting up, and it was hard. So,
Yeah, so...
But it's different for everybody, too, so you never know.
Yeah, so folks, wear your mask. It's important. It's very important.
It's important for the people around you, even if not for you. That's the point we're trying to make here.
Yeah, exactly. One story that I really want to get to. Yeah, I'm going to save the big one for last here, but I want to get to this because this is a quick one. Our friends at Progress, Michigan sent out a press release on July 27th. On Monday, the Michigan Supreme Court ruled unanimously in Progress, Michigan's favor in a case regarding the email practices of former Attorney General Bill Schuette. The case was originally filed after a FOIA request revealed that Schuette and his staff had been using private email accounts to conduct public business. Isn't this the same thing that Republicans complained and whined and griped and bitched about with Hillary Clinton? But her emails... No, it's his emails now.
Let's keep it clear, though. I mean, it's both of their emails. That's the biggest problem with all of this, is that we don't have a leg to stand on as Democrats when we're constantly pointing our fingers at everybody else for things, and then everybody finds out we're doing it too.
Exactly.
So that's exactly what the GOP is doing right now. It is not isolated to one party. But come on. I want to see Schuette's emails so bad. I know there's some really good stuff in there.
Yeah, I'm sure there is. After a win by Progress Michigan at the Court of Claims, the suit was dismissed by the Court of Appeals due to the timing of the filing of the complaint. In a unanimous decision, the Supreme Court reversed the decision of the lower court, holding that the complaint was timely filed. This decision sends the case back to the Court of Claims, where Progress Michigan will continue its pursuit of the requested emails. Lonnie Scott, executive director of Progress Michigan, said, quote, Bill Schuette used every procedural move he could to evade the Freedom of Information Act, but this unanimous ruling shows what we have said all along. No one is above the law. This decision is a win for transparency and for people across the state of Michigan who deserve to know their elected officials are fully accountable to the people. With this procedural hurdle out of the way, we're confident we can win on the merits of our case. We look forward to continuing our fight for transparency back at the Court of Claims and finally securing the records Shady Schuette tried to hide from the public. End of quote.
If we get to see these, this could be huge, because I already know the things that Schuette did while in office. There is so much more than we have seen yet, and if we could get evidence of it and be able to maybe reverse it without, doing another 10 years of work, that'd be helpful.
Yeah, it'd be real nice. And by the way, just for the sake of disclosure, Lonnie Scott has been a previous guest on this show. So,
really? Okay.
Yes, many years ago. We really need to get him back on again.
Yeah, I've heard the name a lot, and I've heard a lot from Progress Michigan, which seems to have done a lot of good work.
Yes, they do tremendous work. Lonnie, Sam Inglet over there, they both do a tremendous job. All right, folks, if you're eating, you might want to stop because of the story that we're going to talk to you about right now. This was written by Tom Perkins for the Detroit Metro Times. This is dated July 29th. And by the way, the Detroit Metro Times does fabulous investigative work. They were the ones that busted, I forget what township it was in Michigan. It was the township where the police chief was handing out these reservist badges. Like Kid Rock got a reservist badge with him. And
oh, got you. So like the degrees, the honorary type degrees they give out, basically, but he was giving out badges. Oh, gosh.
Giving out badges. They could purchase guns, bulletproof vests, stuff like that.
Oh, my gosh. Okay.
Yeah, this story went back a few years. Detroit Metro Times was the one that brought it to the forefront because it had been reported by local media, but not widespread across the state.
Sadly enough, that sounds like exactly what they're doing right now with federal officers. And
I think it made federal news.
Okay.
Just because of the Kid Rock connection.
Right, right.
So, again, this is the Detroit Metro Times. Listen to this, folks. Each day, tons of human excrement flows from southeast Michigan's toilets to its sewer system, mixing with industrial waste from Zug Island, Ford's auto plants, Detroit Receiving Hospital, and every factory, industry, home, and commercial building in the region. Once it reaches the Great Lakes Water Authority's treatment plants, water is pulled from the mix, sanitized, and discharged into the Detroit River. What's left behind at the treatment plants is sewage sludge, a highly toxic semi-solid blend of human feces and every pollutant that was discharged into the sewers. Despite the fact that it teems with potentially dangerous chemicals, the sludge is then spread on farmland.
This is how they're fertilizing your food, friends.
Yep.
With your poo.
Yep. Nutrients in human excrement like phosphorus and nitrogen help plants grow, so sewerage departments across the country lightly treat sludge and repackage it as a fertilizer called biosolids that are given away or sold for cheap to farmers. And as a matter of fact, there are several companies around Grand Rapids that deal in biosolids, including one in Cedar Springs. Biosolids are a valuable resource that has been shown to produce significant improvements in crop growth and yield. That is according to the Environmental Protection Agency, which approved the practice in the mid-1990s. By 2018, more than 50% of the approximately 130 million wet tons of sludge the nation produced annually was applied to farmland. So just think about it. 65 million tons of your crap is being spread on crops.
Now let me make this a little bit more shocking for you. Before they switched to the biosolids, which is made from the human waste, like Darren just explained, they were just taking the industrial waste in itself, the industrial sludge waste, and spreading that on the crops to increase the yield. So that's where PFAS basically, and those chemicals, the PCBs, all the different, toxic chemicals ended up getting into the food chain, which are now all over the entire world, and everybody has them in their system. So now, because it's in everybody's system, it's in everybody's biosolids. So it's just continuing to spread, and it's not just toxic waste chemicals. Now you've got, this is hospital waste, Darren said. There are so many possibilities here. What about coronavirus, for instance?
Oh, we'll get into that, because they go through the list of everything that could be in these
all
biosolids.
Of this, I want you to, while you're hearing this, think about the PDR program. Now, that is where we are preserving development rights for agricultural farmland. It's a huge issue in county commission race right now. Democrats are pushing for it. They really want this PDR program because they want to prevent urban sprawl and save farmland. I think it's different. I think it's about avoiding liability for these toxins. So please continue.
Yep, but the practice is increasingly controversial. Public health advocates say any amount of the approximately 90,000 synthetic chemicals in existence, from VOCs to PBAs to PCBs, can be represented in sludge. It can also be packed with superbugs, parasites, worms, hormones, viruses, and bacteria that aren't killed in the treatment process. So you're wondering where the lettuce with the, just name it, Salmonella, E. coli, name your disease. If you want to know where the lettuce gets it from, right there it is.
Yep.
From human poop. Studies show the pollutants are carried to farmland, taken up by crops, and can end up on dinner plates. That's fueling a growing number of biosolid-linked public health crises that are making people sick, polluting drinking water, and pitting farmer against farmer. In Michigan, officials are discovering sludge packed with toxic PFAS, and a growing alliance of farmers, public health advocates, and environmentalists are calling for a ban on spreading the substance on cropland. Christy McGillivray, legislative director of the Sierra Club of Michigan, said, quote, "The best solution is to get this stuff off the market. Anything that was flushed down the toilet, any hazardous chemical that we use in our everyday systems winds up in a wastewater treatment plant, so there are a lot of questions about biosolid safety." End of quote. Municipalities in Michigan, Wisconsin, and Florida, among others, have prohibited biosolids, while Maine has restricted their use. In 2003, Switzerland became the first country to outlaw them. And businesses like Whole Foods and Del Monte tell the Detroit Metro Times that they won't buy crops that are grown in sludge. But the powerful waste management industry and regulators are resistant to prohibition. Sludge is an expensive byproduct that's difficult to dispose of, and selling it to farmers is a cheap solution to the problem. In a statement to the Detroit Metro Times, the Great Lakes Water Authority, which churns out more biosolids than any of the nation's other sewerage authorities, insisted that its sludge is safe.
But look who's on the Great Lakes Water Authority, and I will, without looking, and I can tell you right now, I do not know, I have not checked this, but I am going to call it before I look, and I'm going to guess that board is probably made up of a lot of people that used to own the manufacturing plants.
Probably. That wouldn't surprise me.
And who are now, you should keep in mind, they're not in manufacturing anymore. Now guess what they're in? Contracting and environmental remediation, because they've had their corporate defense attorneys write all of our environmental cleanup laws, including Brownsfield and Superfund. So basically we are paying to clean up their mess while they still poison us.
Exactly. Scott Dean, a spokesman with the Michigan Department of Environment, Great Lakes, and Energy, downplayed the threat to human health by saying that state regulators expect PFAS to be present in the sludge.
Okay, now I'm mad. Now I'm real mad.
Quote, due to the fact the biosolids themselves are applied in low amounts in relation to the soil mass in a farm field, they would not be expected to accumulate to the extent to cause adverse effects to public health or the environment. End of quote. He noted that EGLE is forcing many PFAS polluters to stop discharging the chemicals into sewers, but the state doesn't plan to test for most of the other 90,000 chemicals that exist.
They don't want to know. I mean, look what happened when we found out about the PFAS.
Yeah. For those of you that are outside of the Grand Rapids area, we have a PFAS crisis just north of Grand Rapids, Michigan, in the town of Rockford and in the town of Belmont. PFAS that was dumped there by Wolverine Worldwide. You know, your hush puppy shoes, your Wolverine boots.
It was their corporate defense attorney, their longtime corporate defense attorney, that made your state environmental cleanup laws.
Yeah.
It was their attorney that decided how they should clean up their mess.
Mm-hmm.
And ultimately, they just found a way for us to pay for it. It's really terrifying when you see what's going on.
Of course. Because we always get stuck with the bill, right?
That's right.
In a scathing 2018 report, the Environmental Protection Agency's Office of Inspector General, this is the watchdog over the EPA, wrote that it found 352 contaminants, including 61 that it classified as acutely hazardous, or priority pollutants in biosolids it tested. Among other substances, it detected PFAS, pharmaceuticals, steroids, and flame retardants.
The firefighting
Yes,
foam
the
that
foam
contains PFAS and other things.
Yeah. For those of you that are outside of the state of Michigan, I got 3 letters for you. PBB. Go back to the 1970s in Michigan. And one of our listeners, his wife, I went to school with both of them. She has been part of a PBB study ever since she was a girl because of this fire retardant being added to cattle feed. They had to kill thousands and thousands of cattle in Michigan. They're buried up in, I believe, Kalkaska County somewhere.
2 years ago, I went to the airport board. I had some local residents who had called me. I was running for county commission, and they were concerned about their water because they lived right outside the airport, and they'd heard about the flame retardant chemicals and being issues near airports. So we went to the airport board, and we were asking about if they were still using this. And they said they were. And when we asked why, they said they didn't have a choice. It's an FDA regulation, they said. So I went home and did some more research. And it turns out that Mr. Dick DeVos is actually our FAA regulatory advisor.
Lovely.
So the guy is advising us to keep using this, also happens to own the hospitals, and will profit when you get cancer.
And his wife is the education secretary.
Yeah, that's what they call her, but yeah, she's
who
Nazi in chief.
Yeah, born into money, married into more, Let me continue the story here. Despite the potential for high toxicity, federal law only requires wastewater treatment plants to consistently monitor for 9 heavy metals, intermittently test for other contaminants, and kill most pathogens and living organisms by using heat or dolomitic lime. The latter lowers the pH to make it more acidic and inhospitable to organisms. The EPA's Office of Inspector General found the agency can't properly regulate sludge because it doesn't have the tools to assess the safety of all the other pollutants found in biosolids. David Lewis, former EPA microbiologist opposed to the use of biosolids, said this, quote, "Biosolids have everything that goes down the drain from funeral homes to slaughterhouses to everyone's toilet that's hooked up to the sewer system. All of these things are unsafe according to scientific literature, so how does adding lime and putting it on land make it safe?" End of quote. Moreover, individual chemicals that aren't dangerous on their own can become toxic when mixed.
Right.
Lewis likens the situation to going into a pharmacy, grabbing different bottles off the shelf, and swallowing pills. Quote, "You're going to drop dead, and that's what we're doing with sludge." End of quote. A growing body of evidence highlights the risk. A 2013 University of North Carolina study found 75% of people living near farms that spread biosolids experienced health issues, including burning eyes, nausea, vomiting, boils, and rashes. A University of Georgia study found similar issues, while others living near sludge fields have contracted MRSA, which is a penicillin-resistant superbug. Lewis investigated 2 deaths near fields where sludge was spread and found that the substance triggered reactions that killed the 2 people. More recently, he's linked the substance to autism.
Ooh, that would make a lot of sense considering the numbers there.
In Georgia, sludge killed an entire herd of cows. In Maine and New Mexico, farmers last year had to put down herds of cows found to be filled with PFAS and producing toxic milk. Last week, officials in Maine discovered cows teeming with the highest levels of PFAS ever found in the animals.
I got to pause real quick because I've read studies saying that almost all the PFAS that goes into a cow comes out through their milk.
Meanwhile, biosolid treatment centers are sources of air and water pollution. The substance is thought to be partly responsible for toxic algae blooms in the Great Lakes and Florida. So this is just lovely stuff here.
Yeah, and keep in mind, this stuff's going right back into the rivers. If you take a look at the rivers, you can see the trees are dying along the edges of every river and stream in the state.
Yeah. Speaking of which, let me continue here. Before the 1973 Clean Water Act, industry discharged its waste directly into the nation's waterways. Rivers became so polluted that those in industrial regions like Michigan and Ohio regularly caught fire. The CWA, yeah, can you imagine that?
No.
That's a scary thought.
That's shocking.
Get out on a tube and start floating down the river, and here's the flames building up.
I've never even heard anybody talk about that. That makes me wonder how it's gotten
because we've gotten
buried,
such a short memory when it comes to these things.
And industry is very powerful. So.
Exactly. The CWA mandated a proliferation of wastewater treatment plants that would take in human and industrial waste via the nation's expanding sewer system, then spit out clean water into the rivers. America's waters quit burning, but the solution presented a new problem: sewage sludge. At first it was dropped in the ocean, but that created large dead zones. Then industry tried burning it, but that often violated the Clean Air Act. Despite the fact the sludge was too toxic for the ocean or air, the EPA in 1993 approved a rule change that would allow it to be spread on farmland. Lewis says scientists at the agency uniformly opposed the idea, but leadership pressed forward with the approval. Quote, "Not a single study demonstrated that this practice was safe." End of quote. That's a direct quote from Lewis. These days, when sludge isn't spread on farmland, it's either put in a landfill or in some cases incinerated with pollution controls.
Yep. I've seen this, and I'll tell you right now, if you pay attention to what's happening, corporations are taking their polluted soil and they're putting it anywhere but on their property because they do not want the liability right now. Even the middle of highways has become a dumping place for bad soil. Yes.
And I'm just going to stop right there because this article goes on. It's extremely lengthy, but it's extremely important that you read this. So we have a link to this on our Facebook page. Go to facebook.com/Southpaws Radio Show and look for the article from the Detroit Metro Times that says toilet to table. and you'll find the story there. All right, well, we've got other things that we got to cover here real quickly. You wanted to talk about a local race here in Grand Rapids, the 3rd Congressional District. Justin Amash, who has now decided he ain't running.
Which, whoa, what happened there?
Yeah. I think he either found out he wasn't going to get the fundraising because he left the Republican Party, or
but he's so
somebody
rich.
got to him. I don't. Yeah, but the rich don't want to use their own money.
I'm thinking he just made a deal with somebody. He was going to sit down and let somebody else take their
That's
throne.
what I'm thinking. So we have the primaries coming up. I should say primary because there's about, 4 or 5 Republican candidates and only 1 Democrat running?
Right.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, because people understood you can't have 2 Democrats on a ballot because the party will just really work against the other one that they don't want.
But they do in California.
Oh, to be California.
Yeah. So you wanted to talk about 2 of the candidates, Peter Meyer and Lynn Affendoulis.
Yes. This is incredibly dangerous, friends. I tell you, I am critical of both parties, incredibly critical, especially locally. I look into everybody. I look into where their money's coming from, to who they're married to, who their parents are. And I can't get past these 2 candidates and how dangerous they are to get to the Democrats. So all I know for sure is she can't be worse than this. Okay? She cannot be worse than this. If I am saying that, I really hope you hear me, because Peter Meyer is, number 1, a Navy SEAL. And number 1, that makes him incredibly pro-military. It makes him, he's in charge of the corporation whose number 1 transportation, which, I mean, they ship all over the country, and their number 1 form of transportation right now is BDP. Now, BDP transportation also happens to be the main broker for our region for ICE. The connections between Meyer and the whole Meyer family and the Republican Party and the military terrify me, because the Prince family is also from West Michigan. The DeVos family, they're all very close. And this is just a level of monopoly and oligarchy that we can't survive, you guys. We will lose every right we have. So make sure you're looking at what's going on the ballot. Make sure you vote in this race. And just do not vote for anybody on the GOP side. Save us, please, at least the chance to have the opportunity to vote again next time. Because I don't see it happening if we end up with another Trump presidency and we end up, with the GOP taking these seats again. I just don't understand where we go from there.
Yeah, that's a scary thought. And actually, there's a great article. Our friend Jeff Smith has written an article on this, and we will post it to our Facebook page.
Yes, so please read it.
Go to facebook.com/Southpaws Radio Show. This is an article Jeff Smith writing for grid.org. The headline reads, front-running GOP candidates for Congress are both backed by members of the Grand Rapids power structure. It's an interesting read. Folks, we are out of time for this week. I'm Darren Gibson.
I'm Katy Steele Baroni.
For Kristen Cook, please support independent media and the First Amendment.
The stations that carry Southpaws do not necessarily share the opinions expressed on the show. Southpaws is protected by the First Amendment to the U.S. Constitution and is copyrighted by Big D Entertainment. All rights reserved.